5 years ago, a school in Kent collapsed. It was at a weekend. If it had been the week, we couldn't be standing here talking about children that had died in that school collapse. Why has it taken you 5 years to try and find out how many schools have this concrete?
So what happened immediately after that is there was a warning issued from the Department for Education and the local government association to all responsible bodies, which are local authorities and MAT trusts. And that warning basically said, you will now have to look for Raac, and it basically gave information about how you identify it, what you need to do. Then there was further guidance put out in 2021. And we decided last year that we didn't want to leave it to those that are responsible for our school buildings, which is the responsible bodies. So we did something which I don't think any other government has done, is we commissioned so we identified all the schools built within the period 1950s to 1994. We designed a detailed questionnaire with the guidance that will enable each one of them to say whether they had the signs of Raac or not. Those questionnaires came back, and then we sent out surveyors to then say whether it was critical or non-critical. So it is not the job of the Department for Education, but we chose to do that because we wanted to make sure that we had that information centrally. On top of that, we wanted
to... on that, sorry.
Yeah.
A school collapsed.
Yes.
And it took you 4 years to send out questionnaires to find out how many schools had Raac.
No, we sent a warning out to the people responsible.
But you're saying that the government is not responsible, ultimately, for the safety of children in schools?
The school building's responsibility is with local authorities and multi-academy trusts.
Do you believe the government did everything in its power?
But we've taken further now.
Do you believe the government did everything in its power, has done everything in its power to make sure that children aren't being taught in schools that could collapse without warning?
Absolutely, because the responsible bodies have that duty. What we have done since is we have basically said we want to have more information centrally.
Well, I mean, I don't think you should be congratulated on that. I mean, there are literally children.
I'm not looking to be congratulated. I'm just saying what we have done.
There are literally children who've been going to school in buildings that could have collapsed. Children could have been seriously injured. Children could have died. And only now are you assigning caseworkers and money to sort this out?
No, the responsible bodies have always been responsible for making sure they have surveyors, making sure they look at things like asbestos, have an asbestos plan, Raac, etc. They have a responsibility for the maintenance of their buildings. What we wanted to do was go one step further, because, and actually, based on the new evidence that came out over the summer, what we've done is we've got our own engineers. We went into settings which are outside our jurisdiction, but we got permission to go in to look. The reason we've been really, really cautious is because we found one panel that had moved in a ceiling that looked as though it should be non-critical. So non-critical ceilings, they're just supposed to be managed by the responsible body. We have gone the super cautious route and said, anything that's non-critical, we're going to treat as critical. So I actually think we have taken a very responsible way. We've hired the surveyors ourselves. We've got 3 porter cabin companies. We've got a propping company. We've got caseworkers.
Should that have happened in 2018? Should that have happened the moment a school collapsed? And I repeat, it happened on a weekend. If it happened in the week, we could be talking here about children that have died. Do you not think all this should have happened the moment that school collapsed?
I think the responsible bodies have to take on the duties that they have.
So you're basically passing the blame here?
No, that's what we decided not to do.
No, that is what you're doing.
No,
you're saying
they have the duty.
The Department of Education is not responsible ultimately for this, and actually now we're being the good guys that come along and sorting this out.
We are supplementing and supporting the responsible bodies who are responsible for buildings. We wanted to go that extra step, and to be honest, if we hadn't, when I got this latest information, this new evidence, there was nothing I could have done with it, because I wouldn't have known where the non-critical schools were. I knew exactly where they were because of the work that's been being done since last March. Now, of course, there's been Raac that's been around and been talked about since the 90s. In 2007, there was structural engineers who said, you needed to get all the roofs surveyed then. There's been successive governments who've had roles to play, as well as the responsible bodies who've always had a role here. What we've done, and I think it is the right approach, and actually, just because I want people to just put this into context, there's 22,500 schools, up to 15,000 that could have had Raac. Of those, that 90% have sent the questionnaires back, only 1% do. So it's actually a very small number that actually end up having Raac, and we're now taking urgent action.
So how many more schools do you estimate could still have Raac?
Well, not thousands. It's probably in the hundreds. We've still got
so
some
hundreds more schools right now.
It could be. We've still got more to survey.
That's incredibly worrying, isn't it?
We've still got more to survey.
Are you worried about it?
Well, the reason I'm doing this and
but
getting
are you
on,
worried about that?
Are
you worried that
the
hundreds
reason
of schools
I've
could have
been
Raac?
really cautious is because, of course, I worry about it. There's nothing more important than children's safety. So the reason I've been cautious, more cautious than anybody else, actually, in designating non-critical and treating it as critical, is because I am worried. I wouldn't be able to live with that. That's why I said, as soon as I got that information at the end of August, I knew it was going to be really bad for parents.
You said on Friday that parents shouldn't be worried about this, and now you're saying you're really worried about it.
Well, because for a very small number of cases, what I said was there's 22,500 schools. The vast majority have no Raac at all. If you listen to some of the media reports in the papers, you think they all had it. The vast majority have nothing. Most of the surveys that have come back, only 1% actually have Raac. Of that, most of it is not critical. So that is what I was trying to put into context. But now we're on it, we will know more than any government in the world about Raac in our schools because of this process that we've been in. And it's centralised, which is not usually what we do as a government, but we've chosen to do that. We've chosen to take the action, and we will always put the safety of children first.
The list of schools that have Raac that you know about, when will you publish that, and why haven't you published it?
We will publish it this week, but not all schools are back. So we've got caseworkers working with each one of those individual schools, and I just want to go round the loop and make sure that every single one of them has been able to speak to all of the parents. I don't want parents finding out from, a news channel. I want them finding out from the school. So we'll publish it this week. We're just going to go round that loop, check again that they've had chance and everybody has sent out the letters. We sent a template letter to make it easy to the parents so that everybody knows if they're affected by this.
Isn't this issue a perfect example of what's happened over the last 13 years with underinvestment in public services? Your department's budget has been drastically cut in the last 13 years, and we still have these kind of buildings, these kind of issues, because this government has chosen not to prioritise funding public services like schools.
We're spending more on schools than we ever have in our history, no matter which way you measure it. Since I've been in place, which is less than a year, we had an extra 2 billion per year in the autumn statement, an extra up to 900 million next year for paying for pay. But if you look at the building programmes, often the opposition talks about the previous programme, and I've looked in that in great detail. I was working in business when this programme, but I've gone into it in great detail. They spent a fortune. Most of the schools were not fit for purpose. They were massively behind. Of all of that time, they only built 180 secondary schools. No primary school was ever included. It wasn't based on conditions. And in Knowsley, where I'm from, they built a whole load of school buildings and didn't include a single classroom wall. We then had to spend millions going back and putting the walls in. So what we've been doing is working on modularised, value engineered, very efficient, net zero buildings, which are a third cheaper and come complete with classroom walls.
My final question, when can you tell parents today that Raac will be safe, where it's found in school buildings, when mitigation is put in? When will these schools, all schools, be safe for children to go into?
Well, they'll be safe as soon as they're mitigated, but then the next question is, what's the time period to either refurbish or rebuild? So we'll be each one of those we'll have to work on case by case. So first of all, we're going to get them made safe. For a rebuild it could, but quite a few of them it's only a partial refurbishment. But I don't have all of that right now, but we will get a plan and every single one of them will be done.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick two-shot down. Is that all right? Just two moments for
Does anyone ever say, you know what, you've done a good job because everyone else has sat on their arse and done nothing? No signs of that, no?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure that's... I mean, the other way of seeing it is that Raac panels are really dangerous when they collapse, and they're in hundreds of schools, potentially. And if I had a child, I've got a child coming in a few weeks, if I sent my child to a school and then discovered that they had Raac panels that could collapse, I'd be petrified. Absolutely.
But the responsible bodies are absolutely responsible for that.
Yeah.
They should not be having any school, because by the way, a school can collapse for many reasons, not just Raac. It can be, a leak. There's loads of reasons, but they have to take that responsibility. They know the buildings, they have estate managers if they're big enough. They must take that responsibility. What we've done is go over and above that because we wanted to make sure it was happening. We wanted to secure exactly that. And we wanted to make it efficient as well. We've had the porter cabins, we've had the engineers, we've had the propping companies. They'll all be done, you know, very soon. And then we'll get to every single one of them. You know, all of this publicity will make sure that the ones that haven't yet sent back the questionnaire, they're going to send them back pretty quickly.